selected companies beginning to explore that. Retirements. Again, we're seeing not so much of this going on, but in Canada, again, we are seeing to some extent less early retirement than in other sectors. The U.S. and Brazil tends to have much less of a safety net and perhaps not as much of a focus on human capital. You know, one of the dangers, of course, with early retirement is you're really losing all of the intellectual capital that goes along with that, particularly in technical trades and in trades where you require those grizzled old guys who can train the young people on, you know, how to do things. We're seeing this with Duke Energy, for instance. There may be welders and pipe fitters who know exactly when that facility was built, and they know, where the weak welds are and where the issues are. And those people retire, there's just a huge accumulation of knowledge that disappears along with them. That's very difficult to replace. Capital investment, again, this is perhaps driven more in Canada by the oil and gas, where the capital growth is much higher. Interestingly, in Brazil, the big industry there, of course, is also oil and gas. My Brazilian graduate student was kind of filling me in on the politics there, where the president of Brazil is actually going to the head of Petrobras and said, you will not put capital investment on hold. You will not encourage early retirements. We want to give the complete appearance that everything is fine. So if you're the head of Petrobras and the president tells you to do it, you're going to do it, right? And so many of those government subsidies are being pushed that way. Oil is less than $1 a gallon in Brazil, so it's highly subsidized. Taxes are very high, of course, too. But in Alberta and British Columbia, a lot of the major expansion in oil sands is being delayed or just being put on hold. A lot of the drilling is going away. We're seeing the same thing in Latin America and Chile. Major copper mines, BHP Billiton, had a huge copper mine project going on down there. They've put that on hold indefinitely. And BHP has a ton of cash. I mean, they have a war chest of cash, but they're putting it on hold because they don't like the economics of it until copper prices come back to a level where they feel very comfortable with it. One of the things we're seeing is that companies are also starting to communicate with their suppliers. And I can't emphasize how important this is. And again, in places like Canada and Brazil, this seems to be more so than in the U.S. A lot of the U.S. executives I talk to really aren't very good at communication with their suppliers. They kind of view them as the enemy, sort of, in many cases. But I think here perhaps people are saying, well, let's at least sit down and have an open and frank conversation and discuss openly what's happening in your business, what's happening with your relationship with the bank, what's happening with your other customers. I think the general populace doesn't really understand, for one thing, what will happen when Chrysler and GM goes bankrupt or shuts down plants. The number of companies that rely on the automotive industry for their business is massive. It's a massive number of suppliers, and we don't think about it. And if you have suppliers that have relationships with the big three, I would want to sit down with them and find out what exactly the impact of those companies going under is going to have on their business. If it's 30, 40% of their business, they are going to be in real trouble. And, shutting down a company for 9, 12, 15 weeks at a time, it could really put them under very quickly. So having those discussions, as painful as they may be, is something that really is worthwhile. Don't just stick your head in the sand and hope that things will work out. It's better to face the music and at least try to prevent things from getting to that point. And suppliers may not be very open to talking to you up front. They may want to put it off as well. You know, I did not analyze it at that level. That's a good question. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there probably would be. Do you have a hypothesis on that specifically, or you think it'd be more so?
The eastern seaboard's far more effective than the west.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
It'd be far more aggressive to that question.
Yeah, that's good to know. I'll take a look at that. Thanks. We are seeing that a lot of companies are very worried about their customers as well. And certainly the response here to automotive is one. But even smaller customers are also of great concern. The issue is not as bad in the U.S. and Brazil, where I think the larger customers, for the most part, have built up a fairly strong cash position. And as I said, even though they may have a strong cash position, they may be spending less or may not be buying as much. We are seeing certain sectors of the economy benefiting from the stimulus. Certainly, construction, infrastructure, medical health records. Some certain isolated sectors are going to see an infusion of business coming in. But again, some are definitely better prepared than others as we look across there. The small to medium-sized customers, less so, not so well prepared. And this is actually impacting the larger enterprises as well. In the Raleigh area, John Deere has a big turf care manufacturing facility. And they produce a lot of the golf course equipment. Well, you can imagine what's happened to the golf industry since this downturn. A lot of big companies are canceling their corporate junkets to golf courses and so forth. There's fewer and fewer people, and these smaller golf courses are saying, rather than buying that new piece of equipment, let's just try to maintain the old one for another year or two until things turn around. And they are seeing, equipment that's been ordered, that's been manufactured, suddenly canceled from their order books. And certainly Caterpillar is seeing the same thing. They had a 3-year backlog on mining equipment, which has dried up overnight. So, these orders are disappearing, and they're disappearing very quickly. So certainly, this is an interesting time. It is interesting to see how companies are dealing with those downturns. For instance, at John Deere, they are now merging the turf care department with the ag department. And they're taking this as an opportunity to say, our agricultural division has always been kind of slow moving. They don't, they're old-fashioned. There's that entrenched culture. The turf care people are kind of new and ambitious and energetic and younger. And they're merging those two divisions, and they're going to say, we're going to move a lot of that division to the North Carolina area because we want to kind of change the John Deere culture and bring it up more into the 21st century. So, there are times when you want to do these things and jump on these as opportunities. Yes?
Do these kind of numbers predict predatory behavior on the parts of larger businesses, small ones that are getting
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. It was interesting when during the AIG bailout, a lot of insurance companies were visibly upset at the bailout because they said, we were ready to pounce on those customers. We were very much ready to grow our business. And so, to some extent, I think pruning of the unhealthy ones is not always a bad thing. That's what happens in the downturn. So. Again, short-term credit, I can't emphasize this enough. How many of you have had a conversation with your suppliers and asked them, what lines of credit do you have? Have they been curtailed? Have they been reduced?